right. Good afternoon. I'm Pauline Pitt, Chairman Emeritus of the Preservation Foundation of Palm Beach, and I am delighted to interview Mr. Leonard Lauder on his most interesting book, The Company I Keep, My Life in Beauty. Mr. Leonard Lauder is Chairman Emeritus and former CEO of the Estée Lauder Companies. Leonard, it's so nice to be talking with you.
Pauline. I'm happy to be here. And for those of you who may be watching, greetings to you all. I'm sorry that this is virtual, but next year we'll all be together dancing. But right now it's virtual, and I'm thrilled to be here with you, Pauline, and with all of our guests.
Well, I'll continue and I'll say, you make people feel so good about themselves, much in the way that your mother inspired confidence in women. Your mother created her own all-purpose creams and powders. It was certainly a hit at a great moment in time, just what women craved. You say she was driven. She made General Patton seem reserved. How was it to learn so much from her knee?
Well, thank you, Pauline. I'll tell you this. Uh, Learning from my mother was an interesting thing for me because we were together all the time, all the time. And I heard all the things that she said. Uh, we lived together. My parents were divorced for a while. And so I was an only child living at home with her. And I heard her speaking every day. I heard her on the phone. And when I finally got out of the U.S. Navy, I'd enlisted in the Navy, went to officer candidate school. And when I joined Estée Lauder in early February of 1955, I sat in the same office as she did. And I heard her speak every day, every minute, every way. And it was great to learn. However, you learn many things from your mother, from your father, from school, from experience, from the Navy, and everything that I've learned, I was able to put together into this book that I've written. And that is the genesis of Estée Lauder is that my mother's uh, old friend, a man named Leo Lerman, who had been in high school with her in the Newtown, Long Island. And he told me that she was always trying to make her friends beautiful. She was combing out their hair and she would make up their faces. How would she make it up? Rouge was in those days quite a little bit of a no-no. She would take a lipstick, put some lipstick on the cheek, and then they would look great. But the way she loved to make people look beautiful was fabulous.
Well, I love you telling in the book growing up in New York and your love of New York and that your mother would sometimes allow you freedom to go off by yourself to absorb and soak in the culture of New York. And I think that had much to do with your later love for collecting. And I think you are quite multifaceted in the way that you learned so much from what you saw in New York, but you certainly learned from what your mother and father said to you. And that you were with your mother at the beginning of this incredible company that you all created. I love that you compiled and you started your postcard collection. Please tell us about that.
Well, thank you for that. So, in the late 30s, when my mother was just starting out, not in business, but she was selling her creams, which she had gotten from her uncle. My mother's mother was Hungarian, and her brother was an esthetician, and he brought some of his formulas from Hungary, and my mother had bought those products from him and used them. And it was so great to see her having such pleasure in her work and pleasure in making women look beautiful. And from that time on, from that day on, no matter where she was, she would always say, "Oh, you need a better lipstick." She would send them one, whatever. It wasn't trying to sell, but to be there. And so she decided that in the early 30s, in the late 30s rather, early 40s, that she would go down to Florida, to Miami, because that's where the customers were at the time. And she did that, and she let me cruise everywhere. And there was no one to watch after me, and so what I did, I had the greatest time in the world. Went to museums, I did everything.
Well, I think that's wonderful. And so you did travel with your mother to Florida almost every year, and you were in Miami, and you must have seen those beautiful ladies of the day, and that must have your mother must have loved that, and she must have created such an excitement with them to make them feel even more beautiful. Tell us about that excitement, and tell us about Miami in the day.
Well, Miami at the time was sort of a bookend to Palm Beach, and in that there were large estates there, and there was a great deal of money there, even though it was the end of the Depression, beginning of the war. Uh, there was a Saks Fifth Avenue there, which did so well that they finally moved up here to Palm Beach, and at some later time. Uh, and it was just fabulous. And she I've never seen anyone have as much pleasure as she did in making women beautiful and working.
I love that. Well, I have to say, Miami in that era was must have been very exciting. You had those beautiful hotels which are now demolished, the Nautilus and the Rana Plaza, which I'm sure you saw or went to, and
Right.
Palm Beach, which was north of Miami, which is a much smaller place. And yes, you are correct that later on in the years, Saks Fifth Avenue did open on Worth Avenue in Palm Beach, and Bonwit Teller, and they used to be open from Thanksgiving until Easter
Right.
Sunday, and then they were closed tight as a tick. That's
Yeah.
how it was in the day.
But
So
no more.
I love that you observed all of that. And when did you first come to Palm Beach?
Uh, I believe the first year we came to Palm Beach was about 1946 or 47. And I'm not quite sure of the date. And in those days, uh, there, there were only two hotels. There was the Breakers and a hotel called the Whitehall. The Whitehall was an extension of the Flagler Mansion, and they had built a hotel adjoining the Flagler Mansion, and the Flagler Mansion was part of the hotel itself. And we stayed there for 1 or 2 years, and then moved. Oh, then the Biltmore Hotel opened. That's where we stayed. But then in the mid 40s or early 50s, they bought a home in Palm Beach itself. The home had been owned by Philip Hewlettar. And those of you who are members of the Four Arts know that he endowed the gardens in the Four Arts. And it's a very small circle of life, but I knew him, she knew him, and it was an amazing place to be.
Well, I think it's wonderful that your mother and father bought this beautiful house on the ocean, which was the architect was Marion Sims Wyeth. What sort of condition was it in? It must have been, I was thinking, it must have been fairly battered by the sea and the salt. And how did you find it?
Well, it wasn't much better. I'll say what they did. Uh, uh, Mrs. Swenson, who was the last occupant there, had passed away, and the house was in reasonably good shape. However, uh, they decorated it in a very traditional way, and what they tried to do was when there was a local auction house here auctioned off the furniture from the Swenson mansion, and they bought a lot of the furniture. So much of the furniture we have today in the main part of the house, of the living room, dining room, etc., came from the original Marion Sims Wyeth building that was designed in mid 1930s.
And I think Polly Jessup had much to do with the interior design of the house in the day when the Swensons had it, certainly.
I believe she
And
did his. Yeah.
yes. And well, and just asking about the looking out east at the ocean from the house, was it still that wonderful lawn that you can see today?
There was a lawn you could see today. However, I am a lawn junkie and I love lawns. And
That's a good one.
what my parents used the lawn for garden parties on occasion. But when my late wife Evelyn and I took over the house 25 years ago, uh, I ripped up the lawn, planted zoysia grass, and wanted to make it the most beautiful lawn that I've ever seen in my life. And when I walk on it every morning, I walk in my bare feet and I feel the lawn and I think of all the people who have been there.
Well, it's such a pretty house, and I love that your brother bought the house next door, which was also by Marion Sims Wyeth.
Well, the story is really that my parents were very afraid that the breakers would buy the two houses, and
Mhm.
then that was not right. So I bought that house also, and for my parents, and then after my mother passed away, I inherited the house we're in now, uh,
Yes,
and he inherited the other one. We used the same architect, Jeff Smith, who many of you may know,
I do.
and we converted it to what it is today. But there's something very interesting that I'd like to tell you that I had a friend here who was today, she's about 95, 96 years of age, who I invited to come to see the house when Evelyn and I were first moving in there. She looked around and she said, "You have to respect the house." And that has resonated with me when it comes to preservation. You have to respect the house that you're in because it has houses have a life of their own, and respect what you bought. And so the house is the same house today as it was all those many, many years ago. Yes, a new coat of paint. Yes, it's air conditioned. Yes, it has comfortable furniture. And yes, it's the family home. And I think of my parents all the time and my dear late wife Evelyn at the same time.
It's a wonderful house, and I love that you've preserved it exactly as you say, the way it should be. And I appreciate that so much that you do that. Um, may I go back, Leonard, a little bit to your book and how you wrote when you were the marvelous story of you deciding to expand your company and trying to get Harrods in London to take on Estee Lauder Cosmetics, and you had to bring your mother there, didn't you, to sort of
Well,
to talk them
the
into
real story is we had someone we had signed up to be our distributor, and we had spoken to him, and we said would like to sell Harrods, and he worked back and said Harrods will take one or two products to see if they sell. That's not the way we like to do things, and so my mother said, "Leave it to me." And
it.
so she and my father took the ship over. I think it was the Queen Mary, or maybe one of the French line, her
That
French language.
Ile-de-France.
What? The Ile de France. Oui, yes, it
I
was.
don't know.
Oui.
Yes.
Pourquoi pas? Okay. And anyway, and so she went to see Harrods, and she, as you probably know, knew how to sell.
I do.
At the end of the visit there, they said, "Yes, we'd love to have your products." Yes.
That
And
wonderful.
when we called the distributor, he was so insulted that we would do it ourselves. He said, "You could have it." And he gave the distributorship back. And today, our English business is well over $1.5 billion.
Goodness. I also love the story in your book about when you decided to go to Fortnum and Mason. And the ground floor there is all food halls.
Right.
And the first floor is what we would call the second floor. And anyway, your first day, you were going to do a promotion by actually not giving a gift with purchase. You were going to do the first day to give away your beautiful compacts for free
Right.
for
Right.
anyone who came. And this very large car arrived, and this very grand lady came out of the car, and she was the lady in waiting to the Queen of England. And everybody was in a flutter. And she came into Fortnum's and she presented her card, and she was there to pick up a compact for Her Royal Highness the Queen of England.
That's right.
What a feather in your cap.
Well, they saved the card and gave it to me, and I've lost it. I don't know where it is, but it was a card about this size, and it was addressed to H.M. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, London, the Buckingham Palace, London. Now, there was no zip code there, but somehow or other they found the Queen, and that taught us one thing. Even though you may be the Queen of England, a woman always loves to have a gift that will make her more beautiful.
And she wasn't going to pass that one up.
Oh no, not at all.
Well, I think that's a wonderful story. And I do think the other part, which I just want to touch on, is how I think your mother was the one who felt location, location, location in all the department stores across the country, America. It was where the counter, where the counter was, near the proximity of the front door.
That's right.
And it
On
was
the
in
right
a
side.
way
When you
of
walk
showing.
on the right side.
You walked in there to the right side and immediately would be drawn to these wonderful products, but you had a wonderful sales pitch to the owners of the department stores that if those ladies came in the door, they might purchase something from Estee Lauder, but they might go in further and buy a handbag or a scarf or a pair of gloves.
Exactly, exactly. And
Brilliant.
and to this day, I cherish the lessons I learned of how they started the business, and I learned something from them. Now, one thing that you may be interested in knowing is that at the very beginning, my parents thought they should start to advertise in a magazine. They went to a large advertising agency, and they didn't have the uh, types of budgets that they needed. So the advertising agency, no, we can't do that. And so they said, what do we do now? Sample our products in such a way that once a woman uses it and she uses it for 2 or 3 weeks or a month or two, she'll never want to use anything else. And that was the secret sauce that built our company. So it says, when someone says no to you, that is a good way to make lemonade out of lemons. Never take no for an answer. Go for it.
So clever. I think that's amazing. Uh, I think you made Mr. Charles Revson and Madame Helena Rubinstein and Elizabeth Arden fairly nervous by these marvelous ideas.
I think so. Elizabeth Arden and Helena Rubinstein did not pay much attention to us, but Charles Revson did. And he was very, very anxious about her. And, uh, and he said, we have to stop her. And we were growing faster and faster. And he said, stop them. And so there was a fights for where our countess would go, fights about this and fights about that. And in my book, I have a chapter called The Revlon Wars. At the end, we won.
No doubt, no doubt. I think you, from what you say in the book, is that you regarded people and all the staff who worked for you at the Estee Lauder companies, they loved you because you were so kind. And you cared for them and they enjoyed making it all the more important.
And you know, to
So
this day, uh, I still get correspondence from the people that I knew who were working for us behind the counter. They were part of the Lauder family, and they still are. And all of our employees today are members of the Lauder family. The one thing that our company did was to make sure that everyone who worked for us were part of this great family. And when we went public, by the way, in 1995, uh, the, uh, the first summer, I went out to the company's picnic, and we had given shares of stock to every employee who worked for us, free.
that's
And
wonderful.
and 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 a man came up to me and said, "Hello, partner," and he grabbed my hand. And I've always felt the people who work for us are our partners.
Oh, well, I think that's wonderful that you preserved the friendship with your staff and they helped you all along because they loved you. And and I so much enjoyed talking with you, Leonard, and I love the fact that you are here in Palm Beach and you love Palm Beach and you've observed the Preservation Foundation and what we do and trying to keep it sort of how it always looked. We're trying our best, and we thank you for helping us with that along the way and for talking with me today.
Well, Pauline, thank you very much. But I want to remind everyone there, for those of you who have been supporters of the foundation, the Preservation Foundation, for a number of years, every time you've had the gala, my wife Evelyn had designed a compact for you. Now, those are very valuable because we never sold them anywhere. And there are collectors around the country. So save them, and you may be able to auction them off for a lot of money someday. And just remember this, that when you are beautiful, people will love you. And when you're beautiful, you will love yourself. And so I want to all give yourself a hug and say, I'm happy. I'm beautiful.
Well, we've always loved those compacts, and you yourself told me years ago, not only do you keep the compact, but you keep the box it came in because
Right,
it's a
right,
collectible.
right.
So, Leonard, so nice to speak with you.
And
And
Pauline, thank you, John. Thank
well,
you.
thank you so much.
And it's been an
And
honor to be here and talk to you and talk to all of our friends.
and this is your wonderful book, which I've enjoyed so much. And I
Thank you.
think many more are going to be reading it pretty soon after all
I think
these
you have
interviews.
do I have the same tie on? Maybe.
I
Thank
think
you.
you do. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
And
Good
to all
talk.
of you, thank you for supporting the Preservation Foundation. It's one of the great places to put a little bit of money because tomorrow they'll thank you tomorrow for what you've done today. And thank you, Pauline.
Well, thank you, Leonard.